Understanding the background. Two different worlds. Before we tell you this beautiful and heartbreaking story, we need to understand what was happening in the lives of two very different people. On one side of the city, there was a wealthy man. He had money. He had property. He had success. He had everything that American society says you should want: cars, houses, investments, and security. But he had lost something that no amount of money could bring back. He had lost his son. On the other side of the city, there was a single mother. She had nothing. She worked 3 jobs just to feed her children. She lived in a small apartment. She was struggling every single day just to survive. But she had something that the wealthy man didn't have. She had love. She had gratitude. She had a connection to someone who had changed her life. This is a story about how these two people's lives came together at a cemetery, and what happened there would change everything. A strange visitor at the grave. The wealthy man came to the cemetery every week. On Friday afternoons, he would drive to the quiet, peaceful place where his son was buried. He would stand at the grave. He would spend time remembering. Sometimes he would talk to his son, even though his son couldn't hear him. It was his private time, his sacred time, his way of staying connected to the person he loved most. But one Friday, something unexpected happened. When the wealthy man walked to his son's grave, he saw someone there. A woman he had never seen before. A woman who was crying at his son's grave. He felt anger rise up inside him. This was his son's grave. This was his place. Who was this stranger? He approached her carefully. He looked at the grave to see whose grave she was visiting. But she wasn't visiting another grave. She was standing at his son's grave, crying, leaving flowers. The wealthy man asked the question that every parent would ask. "Why are you crying at my son's grave?" The woman turned. Her eyes were red from crying. She looked terrified to see him there. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't mean to intrude. I needed to thank him." Why this hook works. The audience is immediately confused and curious. Why would a stranger be crying at someone else's son's grave? Why would she be thanking a dead child? What's the connection? The hook makes people want to know more. The wealthy man's story. His name was Robert. He was 65 years old. He had built a successful business from nothing. He had made millions of dollars. He had achieved everything he set out to achieve. But none of it mattered anymore. 15 years ago, his son James had died in a car accident. He was 22 years old. He was smart. He was kind. He was everything a father could hope his son would be. The car accident was sudden, unexpected. There one moment, gone the next. Robert had never fully recovered from the loss. How could he? His son was gone. No amount of success, no amount of money, no amount of time could change that fact. He had thrown himself into his work after James's death. He had made even more money. He had built an even bigger empire. But it was all to avoid feeling the pain of his son's absence. His wife had left him 5 years after James's death. She couldn't handle the grief. She couldn't handle living with a man who was emotionally closed off. She couldn't handle a life that revolved around loss. So Robert was alone. He was wealthy, successful, and alone. The only constant in his life was his Friday visits to James's grave. The single mother's story. Her name was Sarah. She was 42 years old. She had never married. She had gotten pregnant when she was 19 years old. A mistake, an accident, a moment of youthful poor judgment. But she had decided to keep her baby. She had decided to be a mother. The father of her son had wanted nothing to do with her or the baby. He had disappeared. He had left her alone to raise a child by herself. For 23 years, Sarah had worked multiple jobs. She had sacrificed everything. She had gone without so that her son could have. She had given up her youth, her dreams, her own happiness so that her child could be okay. Her son's name was Marcus. And Marcus had turned out to be a good kid. He was smart. He was kind. He had dreams of becoming a teacher. But at 19 years old, Marcus had been hit by a car while crossing the street. He had been in a coma for 3 days. Then he had died. Sarah had lost the most important person in her life. The person she had sacrificed everything for. The person who had given her life meaning. The connection, but here's where the story gets interesting. Before Marcus died, he had been a volunteer. He had spent his free time helping people. One of the people he helped was a group of kids at a youth center in the poor part of town. And one of those kids was a boy whose father was dying of cancer. Marcus had spent time with that boy. He had talked to him. He had helped him. He had been there for him during one of the worst times of his life. That boy's name was Daniel. And Daniel was the child of Robert, the wealthy man. Years later, after Marcus had died, Daniel had written a letter to Sarah. He wanted her to know that Marcus had changed his life. He wanted her to know that when his father was dying, Marcus had been there for him. Marcus had shown him kindness. Marcus had shown him that there were good people in the world. Daniel told his father about Marcus. He told Robert about this boy who had helped him when he was grieving. And Robert realized something. This boy Marcus, the one who had helped his son Daniel, was the same boy who had died in an accident. Robert had read about it in the newspaper. He remembered the headline, "Local volunteer dies in hit and run." Robert wanted to do something. He wanted to honor Marcus's memory. He wanted to help Marcus's family. But he didn't know how. He didn't know if they would want his help. So he did something else. He started visiting Marcus's grave. He started leaving flowers. He started spending time there, honoring the young man who had helped his son. He had never told anyone about this. It was his secret, his way of honoring Marcus. And that's what Sarah had seen. Why this section matters. Now the audience understands the connection. They understand that these two people are actually connected through their children. They understand that Marcus had helped Robert's son. They understand that Robert had been honoring Marcus's memory. The explanation: Sarah explained to Robert who she was. She told him that she was Marcus's mother. She told him that she came to the cemetery every Friday to be near her son. She told him that she left flowers. She told him that she talked to him. She told him that it was the only way she could feel close to him. Robert listened. And as he listened, something inside him changed. He realized that he and Sarah had something in common. They had both lost their sons. They had both come to this cemetery to grieve. They had both been trying to stay connected to someone they loved. But Robert also realized something else. He had been selfish in his grief. He had focused only on his own loss. He had focused only on his own pain. He had been so caught up in his own wealth and success that he had never really thought about other people's suffering. But Sarah, this woman who had nothing, had been here every week. She had been doing this every single week for years. She had been honoring her son. She had been celebrating his memory. She had been keeping his spirit alive. And she had been doing it alone. Nobody had helped her. Nobody had given her flowers to leave at the grave. Nobody had been there to support her. The realization: Robert asked Sarah, "Why were you crying today?" Sarah took a deep breath. Today would have been Marcus's birthday, she said. He would have been 26 years old. Robert felt something break inside his chest. This woman had come to her son's grave on his birthday to cry. She had come alone. She had come without anyone to support her. Robert thought about all the things she had told him. He thought about how she had raised her son by herself. He thought about how she had worked 3 jobs to feed him. He thought about how she had given up everything for him. And he thought about his own life. He thought about how he had been given so much. He thought about how he had inherited wealth from his family. He thought about how he had had advantages that Sarah could never have dreamed of. He thought about how his son James had had every opportunity. James had gone to good schools. James had had medical care. James had had stability and security. And he thought about Marcus. Marcus had had none of those things. Marcus had been raised in poverty. Marcus had had every disadvantage. But Marcus had still turned out to be a good person. Marcus had still become a volunteer. Marcus had still helped people, including Robert's son Daniel. The weight of understanding. Robert realized something profound in that moment. He realized that his grief was not more important than Sarah's grief. He realized that his loss was not greater than her loss. He realized that the two of them were equals, even though he had money and she had nothing. He realized that what mattered was not what you had. What mattered was who you loved and how you treated people. And he realized that he had been given an opportunity. He had been given the opportunity to help this woman. He had been given the opportunity to make Marcus's mother's life easier. He had the means to do it. And now, standing at his son's grave talking to Marcus's mother, he knew that he had to do it. But he didn't know how to ask. He didn't know how to offer help without it sounding like charity. He didn't know how to bridge the gap between his world and hers. The conversation continues. Robert and Sarah talked for a long time at the cemetery. They talked about their sons. They talked about their lives. They talked about their grief. And slowly a friendship began to form. Robert asked Sarah about her life. She told him about her 3 jobs. She told him about her small apartment. She told him about the struggles of raising a child alone. She told him about how Marcus had been her everything. And Robert listened. He really listened. He didn't judge. He didn't offer unsolicited advice. He just listened to her pain. Then Robert did something that surprised both of them. He cried. This wealthy, successful man, who had spent 15 years keeping his emotions locked inside, finally let himself cry. He cried for his son. He cried for Sarah's son. He cried for all the pain that both of them had experienced. And Sarah held his hand. She stood there with him, grieving together. The offer. After they had cried together, Robert said something to Sarah. I want to help you, he said. I don't know if you'll let me, but I want to. I want to help make your life easier. Sarah immediately said no. I don't need your money, she said. I'm doing fine on my own. But Robert said, it's not about needing. It's about honoring your son. Marcus helped my son. Marcus was a good person. And you raised him. You sacrificed everything for him. I want to honor that. The real offer. Robert wasn't offering money in a cold, transactional way. He was offering something deeper. He offered to help Sarah leave her hardest job. The one that was killing her back. The one that was the most exhausting. He offered to help her find a better apartment. Not a fancy one. Just something nicer, something more comfortable. He offered to be part of her life. He offered to come with her to the cemetery. He offered to help her remember Marcus. He offered to share in her grief instead of leaving her alone in it. Most importantly, he offered friendship. Sarah cried when she heard this offer. She cried because someone finally understood. She cried because someone finally saw her. She cried because someone finally cared. She said yes. The changed lives. Over the next few months and years, something beautiful happened. Sarah left her most difficult job. She kept 2 jobs instead of 3, which gave her time to rest, to live, to actually be a human being instead of just a working machine. Robert helped her find a better apartment. And more than that, he was there. He spent time with her. He became her friend. They went to the cemetery together every Friday. They brought flowers for both graves. They remembered both sons. They grieved together, which made the grief lighter for both of them. Robert discovered that his wealth could actually mean something, could actually help someone, could actually change a life. And Sarah discovered that she didn't have to carry her burden alone. She discovered that there were good people in the world. She discovered that kindness existed. More than that, she discovered that her son's legacy lived on. She discovered that Marcus had impacted Robert's son Daniel. She discovered that even after Marcus's death, he was still making a difference in the world. The ripple effect. Robert did something else too. He set up a scholarship fund in Marcus's name. The scholarship helped young people from poor neighborhoods go to college. The scholarship helped them become teachers, doctors, engineers, and leaders. Robert was honoring Marcus's memory by helping other young people have the opportunities that Marcus never had. And Sarah watched this happen. She watched as her son's name became known. She watched as other young people were helped because of Marcus. She watched as her sacrifice, all those years of working 3 jobs, transformed into something that helped hundreds of people. What this story really teaches us. The story of Robert and Sarah is ultimately a story about connection. It's a story about how all human beings are connected to each other, even when we don't realize it. Robert and Sarah lived in different worlds. They had different amounts of money. They had different opportunities. They had different advantages. But they shared something deeper. They shared loss. They shared grief. They shared love for their sons. And that connection was more powerful than anything else. The lesson about seeing people. One of the most important lessons from this story is about seeing people. Robert didn't notice Sarah for a long time. He didn't know that she existed. He didn't see her grief. But once he saw her, once he talked to her, once he listened to her story, everything changed. In our world, there are so many Sarahs. There are so many people who are struggling. There are so many people who are doing their best with very little. There are so many people who are invisible because we're too busy with our own lives to notice them. Robert's story teaches us that if we slow down, if we pay attention, if we listen, we can see these people. And once we see them, we can help them. The lesson about true wealth. Robert had money. He had more money than he could ever spend. But for a long time, that money didn't make him happy. That money didn't fill the hole in his heart. What made Robert happy was connection. What made Robert happy was helping someone. What made Robert happy was being part of someone's life. This teaches us something important about wealth. Real wealth is not measured in dollars. Real wealth is measured in relationships, in love, in the ability to help others. Sarah had very little money, but she had something that Robert didn't have for a long time. She had love. She had purpose. She had the knowledge that she had sacrificed for something meaningful. When Robert and Sarah came together, they both became wealthy. Not in money, but in something more valuable. The lesson about our children. Both Robert and Sarah lost their sons. But through their friendship, they discovered that their sons' legacies lived on. Marcus's legacy lived on in the scholarship fund. It lived on in the young people he had helped. It lived on in Robert's son Daniel, who had been changed by Marcus's kindness. James's legacy lived on in the way that Robert learned to love, to connect, to help others. Our children are not just our children. They are part of the world. They touch other people. They make a difference. And when they're gone, their impact continues. Robert and Sarah learned that losing their sons didn't mean losing their influence. It meant that their sons had changed the world, and would continue to change it through the work that Robert and Sarah did in their memory. The lesson about asking for help and offering help. Sarah was struggling. She was working 3 jobs. She was exhausted, but she didn't ask for help. She didn't think she deserved help. She didn't think that anyone cared enough to help her. Robert had the means to help, but he didn't know how. He didn't want to offend Sarah. He didn't want to make her feel bad. What changed was communication. Robert and Sarah talked. Robert offered help in a respectful way. And Sarah, seeing that Robert genuinely cared, accepted help. This teaches us that we need to be willing to both ask for help and offer help. We need to understand that accepting help is not weakness. Offering help is not arrogance. Both are acts of love. The question for you. This story asks each of us several questions. Are there people in your life who are struggling and you haven't noticed? Are there Sarahs in your world who are invisible to you? If you have the means to help someone, are you willing to do it? Are you willing to see someone's need and respond with compassion? Are you willing to accept help from others? Are you willing to let people care about you? And finally, how are you using your advantages, whatever those advantages are, to help other people? Robert's story teaches us that life becomes meaningful when we connect with other people, when we see their pain, and when we do something about it. The eternal truth. The story of Robert and Sarah reminds us of something that we often forget in our busy, complicated world. We are all connected. We are all human. We all experience pain, loss, and grief. And we can all help each other carry that pain, share that loss, and process that grief. When Robert asked Sarah, "Why are you crying at my son's grave?" he opened a door. That door led to friendship, to healing, to purpose, and to a life that was more meaningful than anything money could buy. That's the real lesson of this story. That's what we should take away. That's what should change us. Performing arts, the broader message. How one connection changed 2 lives. What's remarkable about Robert and Sarah's story is how it shows us that one connection can change everything. Robert had been living in isolation, focused only on his grief. Sarah had been living in poverty, focused only on survival. Neither of them thought that their life could be different. But one conversation at a cemetery changed both of their lives. It gave Robert purpose. It gave Sarah relief. It gave both of them friendship and healing. The ripples continue. The impact of Robert and Sarah's friendship didn't stop with them. Spread to others. Daniel, Robert's son, learned what it meant to help others because Marcus had helped him. He used those lessons in his own life. The young people who received Marcus's scholarship went on to become teachers, doctors, engineers. They helped thousands of other people. And they all knew Marcus's name. They all knew that they had been helped because of a young man's kindness and sacrifice. Sarah became an advocate for single mothers. She used her experience to help other women. She showed them that they didn't have to do everything alone. One connection. That's all it took. One conversation at a cemetery. And the ripples spread to touch hundreds of people. The lesson for society. This story teaches us something important about what kind of society we want to live in. Do we want to live in a society where people are invisible? Where people struggle alone? Where wealth and poverty never intersect? Or do we want to live in a society where people see each other? Where people help each other? Where connections are built across the divides that separate us? Robert and Sarah chose the second path. And their lives were better for it. Fire the modern relevance. In 2025, in our modern world, we are more connected than ever through technology. But we are also more isolated than ever. We're alone in our cars. We're alone in our homes. We're alone in our grief. The story of Robert and Sarah teaches us that we need real human connection. We need to see each other. We need to listen to each other's stories. It's easier to ignore someone's pain if we don't know their story. But once we know their story, once we understand their struggle, it becomes harder to ignore. It becomes impossible to stay indifferent. The challenge. In 2025, we need more Robert and Sarahs. We need more people who are willing to see others. We need more people who are willing to ask questions and listen to answers. We need more people who are willing to help. Maybe you're not wealthy like Robert, but you have something. You have time. You have skills. You have kindness. You have love. What will you do with what you have? How will you use it to help others? That's the question that Robert and Sarah's story leaves us with. Television final call to action. If this story moved you, if it made you think about connection and kindness and the importance of seeing others, then smash that like button right now. And subscribe. Turn on the notification bell. This channel is dedicated to stories about real people, real courage, real love, and real compassion. There are more stories coming that will touch your heart and change how you see the world. In the comments below, tell us. Have you ever experienced a moment where someone saw you when you felt invisible? Have you ever helped someone in a meaningful way? Have you ever felt connected to someone across a divide that seemed impossible to cross? Share your story. Your story matters. Your experience might be exactly what someone needs to hear right now. Because the world needs more Robert and Sarahs. The world needs more people who see each other. The world needs more people who are willing to listen. The world needs more people who are willing to help. That if you are one of those people, if you believe in connection and kindness, then you belong in this community. Subscribe now. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being someone who is willing to see others and help them carry their burdens. See you in our next story.